but Father Serra finally enticed his first native family to bring their child to be baptized. The event was cause for great rejoicing in the mission. But as Father Serra began pouring water on the child's head, the parents suddenly had second thoughts. Snatching the child from Father Serra's arms, the parents ran away. But Serra would not give up. There would be new hearts and minds for him to conquer. With San Diego sufficiently supplied and fortified, Captain Portola and Father Serra sailed north for Monterey. By sea, the group easily located the harbor. The Second California Mission, San Carlos Borromeo, was formally inaugurated in Monterey on June 3, 1770. The first Mass was a grand affair, though overshadowed by Captain Portola's announcement that he would not remain to become governor of this new territory. After 2 years of exploring California, he had grown tired of wilderness living and chose to return to a more civilized life in Mexico City. While Father Serra was saddened by the departure of his friend, he could not have envisioned how devastating the loss would be. The man Portola chose to replace him as governor was the next highest-ranking officer, Pedro Fages. A career officer known for beating, extorting, and starving his men, Fages had little regard for the humble padres.
The government was interested in expanding its power over the church, and the church was interested in keeping the government at bay. It was a very uneasy truce.
The original settlement plan called for the third mission to be built among the Chumash Indian villages along the Buenaventura coast. Unnerved by such a large concentration of Indians, Fages instead ordered the establishment of missions at San Antonio and San Gabriel, which he felt were safer locations. But as soon as an advance party arrived at San Gabriel, they were menaced by a great band of armed Indians. Hoping to pacify the hostile natives, one of the friars unfurled a large painting of the Virgin Mary. At the sight of the image, which they took to be a goddess, the natives unexpectedly laid down their bows and arrows. The painting's effect on them was so strong that they even helped the soldiers erect an enclosed fort and chapel at San Gabriel. But the idol did not last. Within days, one of Fages's soldiers killed an Indian chief and raped his wife.
There was continual sexual assaults by the soldiers on the Indians of California, calling themselves modestly gente de razón, which means men of reason. And of course the Indians were gente sin razón, people without reason. These are they're like animals. They're not really like us. You know, we're superior to them, therefore they should be grateful that I decided to expend my lust on you.
Word of the rape and murder spread rapidly, causing unrest among the other tribes. Father Serra could see that many natives were refusing even to come near his mission, fearing abuse from the soldiers.
As soon as he could, Serra arranged to have the mission moved from Monterey to the banks of the Carmel River, a few miles away, to try to make the distinction in the Indian mind between what the fathers were doing, which was helping the Indians, and what the soldiers were doing.
The other missions made similar moves, but the natives still stayed away. Serra feared that Governor Fages and his soldiers were threatening the very existence of the mission project. In desperation, the steadfast Serra took the brazen step of sailing to Mexico City to present personally his concerns to Viceroy Antonio Bucareli. Bucareli wholeheartedly agreed with Father Serra. He officially granted the mission's autonomy from military rule and dismissed Governor Fages from his duties. Unfortunately, the new governor, Don Fernando de Rivera, proved little better than the man he replaced, in Father Serra's view.
Main thing to understand about Serra's relationship with these people is he didn't like any of them. In fact, he thought that none of them really gave him the kind of support that he and the religious enterprise deserved. They represented in California a multiplicity of perspectives, and Serra would basically have preferred California to be a place of one perspective, his.
Serra had barely returned to Carmel before he began a new campaign to have Governor Rivera dismissed as well. The authorities began to tire of Serra's constant complaints.
In fact, occasionally he would be chided by his superiors in Mexico City. Occasionally they would write him and tell him, calm down, not to treat everybody so curtly. And I think he basically tried to do that, but he was a man who was so convinced that what he was doing was what God wanted him to do and was what God was demanding that he do, that he was really unable to see different kinds of perspectives.
By 1775, 6 years after the expedition began, 8 missions had been established, including 2 on the recently discovered Bay of San Francisco. The entire chain was thriving, with the exception of San Diego. From the start, the San Diego Indians resisted all attempts to be converted. But as the frustrated priests became more aggressive in their quest to save souls, the natives were forced to react. On the night of November 4th, they made a second desperate attempt to expel the Spanish invaders. While the mission's 11 soldiers and 2 priests slept, nearly 1,000 hostile Indians gathered outside the mission walls. Just past midnight, the attackers burst in, plundering the chapel and setting fire to the other buildings. Father Luis Jaime rushed out to face the attackers, pleading, "Love God, my children." The angry mob fell upon the defenseless padre, brutally beating him beyond recognition and shooting him with 18 arrows. The other Spaniards managed to survive the attack. Despite their overwhelmingly superior numbers, the natives lacked the organization of forces to drive the missionaries out. When word of Father Jaime's death reached Padre Serra, his reaction was surprising.
Thanks be to God. Now that the terrain has been watered by blood, the conversion of the San Diego Indians will take place.
Serra was pleased that one of the friars was brave enough and conscientious enough to give his life for the spread of the gospel.
Governor Rivera did not share Serra's ecclesiastical fervor, however, and ordered the immediate evacuation of San Diego and the newly dedicated mission at San Juan Capistrano. Just 6 years after its founding, the anchor of the California mission chain lay in ruins, its priest murdered by angry natives. The attack on San Diego further polarized the military and religious camps. Governor Rivera went so far as to break into a church to arrest one of the Indian attackers who had taken sanctuary there. The Padres were aghast at Rivera's total disregard for church sanctity and condemned him with excommunication. Estranged from the Catholic Church, Rivera soon lost favor with the king and was relieved of his duties as governor. The mercy shown by the missionaries in the face of the San Diego uprising seemed finally to win over the natives. Many came to be baptized and become part of the mission community.
And many times the Indians would come because they were hungry. It might have been a bad crop year, or there weren't seeds and things for them to gather. So they would figure, well, out of self-interest, an empty stomach, let's go and see what can happen.
from the point of view of the missionaries and the Spaniards and the Spanish soldiers, once you entered the missions, you had made a decision to stay there, and you had made a decision to subject yourself to a whole range of mission discipline that you didn't probably know very much about when you made the decision to enter the mission system.
Once they did join the mission, the recently baptized Indians, or neophytes, were expected to work in exchange for room, board, and an education. Indian labor built the great churches and grew the crops that helped more Indians to be converted.